Hey friends, Ben here. As you probably know, Mark and I are pretty optimistic people, but just like everybody, we sometimes are feeling down. And when that happens, it affects the moods of our coworkers, our friends, and our families. So in today's episode, we're going to cover our favorite ways to snap out of a funk and live every day like it's Friday.
Welcome to the Friday Habit with Benjamin Manley and Mark Labriola II.
The Friday Habit is for creators, entrepreneurs, and agency owners looking for actionable ideas on how to grow their business and be more profitable.
We'll pull from our combined knowledge of over 20 years and interview thought leaders that will inspire you and give you the motivation you need to kick your business into high gear. Buckle up. It's Friday.
Hey. It's Friday.
What's up, Mark?
Hey, Ben. How you doing?
I'm doing well. We got another review.
What?
Yeah, another one. They still keep coming. There's more people apparently listening.
That's great.
Yeah. This is from Tauzine. I don't know how to say their name exactly. I think it's a last name, but I'm not 100% sure. But they left us a review, and they said, "I'm hooked!" Exclamation point. And by the way, I think people are just starting to mess with me at this point.
All the punctuations.
All the punctuation they're putting in, because the next part is relevant, period. Helpful, period. Insightful, period. I'm so happy I found these two rascals. We're rascals. That's
rascals.
Hey, I'll take it.
What hurts the most? Not flat rascals, just regular ones.
Right. And they said, "I've already been able to take what I've learned, apply it to my business, and make my life better. Plus, if you're a story brand believer, these guys know their stuff." So thank you so much. Thanks for leaving that nice review.
Thanks, Towson. Appreciate that.
I like the way you said that. I hope that's the right way to say it. It sounds good. I think Tauzine, I don't know.
Tauzine sounds like a medication.
I was going to say, I don't
take
think
some Tauzine, but don't drink when you take Tauzine, because that's really bad if you're going to operate machinery.
Exactly. So yeah, if the rest of you are, any of you are enjoying the podcast, please head over to the Apple Podcast app or wherever you listen, leave us a rating and review. And there is a link at the top of the show notes, so you can go there and do that.
And I think we're going to try to do a challenge, right? We're going to do a challenge.
Yeah.
This time around. If you've listened to this episode and you leave us a review, we're going to try to throw some stuff in there.
Yeah. This is a challenge. So instead of making me pronounce all this punctuation and read it out loud, in the next review, if you guys leave us a review, just include the word tennis shoes or the two words tennis shoes in your review and work it in there. Make it sound natural somehow. Or if you were up for an extra challenge, just include the word cummerbund in your review.
Cummerbund, that would be very difficult.
I will definitely give you a shout out if you can get either one of those into your review in a way that sounds somewhat natural.
Double points if you can work them both in. Well, hey, today's topic, 10 practical ways to improve your attitude. I think attitude is so important. I really equate a lot of my success in life and in business because of attitude. I think I've noticed that when you have a positive attitude and when you're intentional about, being upbeat, that really rubs off on people in a positive way, and it helps people associate you in a positive light. When they think of you, they think, "Oh, wow, like that person." I would always think about, getting in the elevator at work when I was, working in an office and just smiling, like walking in smiling.
Uh-huh.
And then when people ask me, "How was your day?" I'm always like, "Awesome. It's great." People would be like, "Why are you so happy?" I'm like, "Because it's another day." Like, I'm alive. Did you smell that fresh air? But I think because of that, one, it's helped me stay positive, because it's hard to be negative when you're smiling or having positive thoughts. Mm-hmm. And then it has just benefited me, like I said, throughout my career, because I've been associated with being a positive person. And so I think that this episode is very relevant. And if you struggle with positivity, if you're more of the glass is half full empty, and you are more of a pessimist and a realist, as some people like to say, this episode is going to benefit you.
Yeah, for sure. And I'd love to just kick us off with a quote from the business thought leader, Captain Jack Sparrow. You may have heard of him. He says, "The problem is not the problem. The problem is your attitude with the problem."
It's good.
So I would take that to heart. But yeah, I mean, yeah, and whether you think of yourself as a realist, optimist, pessimist, I'd say sometimes maybe I'm overly optimistic, especially when I think about how long it takes me to get to work or something. I remember in the back of my mind what was the absolute fastest I ever rode my bike to get to work. Not like what's the average time or what's the longest it would take, but one time I got there in 8 minutes. So it must take me 8 minutes to get to work on my bike.
Yeah, or when you're bidding a project and you're like, yeah, I think we could do this for about $3,000, and then it costs you $4,000 to do, and you're like, crap.
Exactly. And I've really, it's been awesome having people on my team that have helped kind of balance me out in that way. Not that they're negative, but they also can see, what's the worst that could happen in the situation, not just what's the best. And it's helpful to kind of talk through that stuff. So
yeah, I have a built-in, my wife, I don't know if you're familiar with the Enneagram. I think you're familiar with Enneagram. Yeah. She's a 6 on the Enneagram. And so, yeah, she is very one who can kind of see things from all sorts of angles. And when we were first married, it was kind of like, I was like, why are you always raining on my parade? Like, why are you always, when I say something, then you try to find a pothole in it.
Right.
But now I love it because now it's like, oh, you know what? Like I have kind of these rose-colored glasses. I kind of think the best of everything, and like it's all going to work out, and I don't see how things can go wrong. And so I like to bring stuff to her so that she can kind of analyze it, and say, oh, well, have you thought about this? Or maybe that wouldn't be a good idea because of X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, oh, I didn't think about that.
Sometimes there's some good input there. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. So today, basically, these are some really practical, simple ways. If you're having a bad day, that's kind of how I think about these. Is like if you're having a bad day and you find yourself getting into a little bit like of a bad mood, or just like you're on a little bit of an emotional roller coaster. I mean, as you know, as entrepreneurs, that's basically what business is. Lots of times in a small business is you have these highs of like, oh my gosh, this day was amazing. I can't believe these projects I just brought in. The next day, somebody doesn't like something you did and you're like, oh, I'm a failure.
Yes.
It can definitely be really high highs and really low lows as an entrepreneur, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I concur with that statement, Ben.
Thank you. Wow, concur. Are you getting bonus points for working in words to the actual podcast? Somebody said concur and just work that in there. That's pretty good.
That's another side game I have going on.
Okay. All right. Cool. So yeah, the maybe starting with number one is just if you are kind of having a bad mood or a bad attitude. I say bad attitude. That's kind of how my mom used to put it when I was a kid, is that I'm having a bad attitude. So I don't want to, when I say that, I don't want to make people think I'm treating them like a kid. I don't know if other people feel that way when I say that, but
your attitude is bad, mister. You get to your room.
Exactly. So, but when I am having kind of like what I would consider a negative attitude about a situation, I first like to just think about and identify the source. Like, where is this attitude coming from exactly? And trying to think back, okay, what are the things that kind of got me here? Sometimes it helps me to write it down. Just take like 2 minutes, 5 minutes and write down why, and kind of almost like journal through your thoughts for a few minutes. Like, why am I feeling this way? It's like, okay, well, I feel this way because I got this feedback from, I don't know, like, let's say you got feedback from a customer or something on like, oh, I wish that you had a different process so that I could do this thing with your company, or they were unhappy with something that was a misunderstanding, and you're going to obviously fix it, but how do you work through your emotions about that? So sometimes writing it down and just thinking through what made you feel that way and almost asking yourself the question, why do you feel that way about it, is really helpful.
That was deep. It's hard for me to connect with my emotions. So I think this will be a good one, a good practice as well.
Yeah, it's a good one to work through that, Mark. And behind that smile in the elevator, maybe there's a little bit of sadness that you could work through.
That's right. There's a sad clown underneath this paint.
So that's number one, identify the source. Number two, just go for a walk. Just a simple thing. If you go for a walk, at least for me, and this obviously depends on the time in the world right now. I don't know where you are, if you're in quarantine or not, depending on when this episode comes out and what's happening. Things are changing very rapidly. But if you're able to go for a walk, or even just get a little bit of exercise in wherever you are, just get your blood flowing a little bit, just having your heart actually rate go up and stuff like that really can help improve your overall attitude and how you're feeling about things. So yeah, sometimes going for a walk, going for a run is great too, but going for a walk is something you can almost always do. That only takes a few minutes.
Yeah, it helps you clear your mind, get some fresh air.
Yeah, depending where you are, even being out in nature, if you are somewhere nearby, where there's some trees or something that can actually, it's scientifically proven to help with your mood and stuff like that, just being out in nature. So
go for a walk.
Number two, go for a walk. Number three, take a short nap. I think, isn't
I'm
taking
all
a
about-
nap like part of every one of my lists that I come up with?
I think so.
How to be more creative, how to get more work done, what to do when you're tired.
Take a nap. Yeah, napping is on every one of your top 10s.
My favorite movies of the year. Taking a nap. Yeah, so taking a nap is huge. I mean, just a quick power nap, doing 15, 20 minutes, getting up again. For me, it's kind of like a reset button on my brain, and I feel like I can have a little bit of a fresh start, fresh perspective. It clears my mind. I think my brain does a little bit of filing maybe while I'm asleep, and it just seems to help when I wake back up.
It's like, all right, round 2.
Yeah,
Ding,
let me
ding.
start over. Exactly. I decide what I'm going to do before I take a nap, and then as soon as I wake up, I start doing it, and it kind of puts me on a better path sometimes.
Can you take a nap like sitting up then?
I actually can. I don't do that very often, but if needed, I'll do that. Yeah.
And you have an open workspace, so it's not like you can just like take a nap at your desk.
I can. Well, we have multiple rooms off the main workspace. So like the room
Okay.
I'm recording in now is kind of like our podcast recording room. I also have a couch in this room, and one of those like light blocking blinds. So it gets pretty dark in here if I put the blinds
Okay.
down.
And you just say, I'm going to go work on a problem. I'll be back in 20 minutes. Don't disturb me.
I'm gonna go fix my attitude. I'll be right back.
I'm going to put myself in timeout.
Yep, exactly. Number 4.
All right, number 4.
Do something creative. So it depends on what situation you're in. But I mean, honestly, something therapeutic, like making something out of clay, something like drawing. If you enjoy drawing, I mean, you have guitars hanging in the background there in your office. Do you ever take one of those down and play a guitar every once in a while?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'll take one of those down and bust out a tune.
Yeah.
Noodle.
Exactly. And I think things like that can help just like relax you a little bit and get your mind off of what you're thinking about and kind of come back at it in a few minutes. So I like to do something creative sometimes when I get into that point. Number 5, just meditate and breathe. I mean, this goes back to, I think it was episode 10 with Dr. Sherry Walling, where we talked a lot about deep breathing and kind of the benefits of that. So if you're curious about that, you can go back to episode 10 and listen more in depth about how that works. But deep breathing is a really great way to kind of change your stress level and your overall mood.
Yeah, and it's interesting how you don't think about your breathing until you think about it, and then you're like, wow, I'm not really like breathing. I'm like taking, small breaths to stay alive, but I'm not like really, breathing.
Right. And for the rest of this episode, you're just going to be like breathing heavily into the mic, like a deep breath.
Yeah. No, but it's true. I feel like when you take really long, deep breaths, like, I don't know if endorphins start to like kick off or other things take place, chemically within you, but it helps you like lift your attitude and your sense just a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. Number 6, eat healthy or eat healthily, possibly, depending on...
If you find yourself in a pattern of like Big Macs and Diet Cokes.
Yeah. Or even if you haven't eaten anything. I mean, eating healthy has to do with what you eat, how much you eat, all that kind of stuff. And I'll find myself sometimes like kind of feeling down. I'm like, oh my gosh, I did not eat breakfast today. And it's 2:00 and I may have forgotten to eat lunch as well. Like that's not super common with me, but if I'm super focused or excited about something I'm working on, sometimes I might forget to do that. So yeah, that happens every once in a while. Or I just in a hurry and I'm just eating junk food, and no wonder I feel like I'm in a funk. I'm like having a sugar low or something like that,
Yeah. And then nothing to pick you up like some grilled chicken salad, with like a Thai peanut dressing. And then all of a sudden you're like, wow.
That actually sounds really good. Yeah, exactly. So eating healthy, I think, helps. And then number 7, putting things in perspective. And yeah, this comes down to things like thinking about, one thing I like to think about is like, hey, in a year from now, how am I going to feel about this situation? A year ago when something else similar happened, how did I feel? In 5 years, will I even remember this happened? Like it's not necessarily to guilt yourself into being like, oh, why do I feel bad about this? But more like just know that this will go away. And in the future, you're going to look back and be like, oh, you're not even going to remember it. So it's not necessarily as big of a deal as it might feel like in the moment.
Yeah. And I think too, the whole perspective thing is a lot of times I have to remind myself of like where I came from. Sometimes you get so caught up in the different things that are going on. And then it's like, if you just take a step back and then think about like, all right, where did I come from? Or,
right.
other situations in my life throughout this time that have worked out, even though these situations seem hopeless or dire or whatever it is. It's like, oh, things kind of worked out and it got me to this point. And so that's always helps me too. It's just beneficial to have that perspective of, things could be worse.
Yeah.
And, things really worked out up to this point. So I'm just going to try to stay positive and move forward,
For sure. Yeah. And another thing along with that, I totally agree. And I think that lots of times it's very easy to focus on what's going wrong and notice only that one thing. And maybe in your life, there are a few things going wrong, but it's amazing how many things in your life are going right. And it's impossible to even keep track and count how many things are going right with you. Like if you're not in pain at this moment with your body, like it's amazing that your body is working so well that every single part of you is functioning, and if you are having a problem, it's amazing that the rest of your body is still working. You know what I mean? It's just like your whole life. Life is complicated. There's a lot of factors, and it's amazing that we have as few problems as we do in most situations.
Yeah, agreed.
So yeah, number 8, listening to upbeat music or something that is encouraging to you or kind of puts you in a better mood. I do this a lot, using music as a way to modify your mood, but I love to listen to music that's gets me excited on the way to work. Like I'm riding my bike, listen to something, and just pedaling as hard as I can, and it gets my heart going, gets like, I guess maybe a little adrenaline going depending on what type of music I'm listening to. And I love like getting pumped up for the day like that, or even on the way home, kind of clearing my head. So I think music is a huge mood adjuster.
Oh man, totally. And it's funny. So I was a musician in a past life, and this is the one that I do the least. But when that song comes on, or whatever it is, I'm like, oh man, like I feel so great. I feel like I could like run a marathon right now. And it's like, why don't I listen to more music? Like I feel like music is a part of me and who I am, but I don't listen to enough music. I feel a lot of times I'm always trying to consume knowledge. Like I'm always like listening to a podcast or, watching a YouTube video or just trying to like grow my brain, listening to an audiobook, all those other kind of things. But sometimes if I just step back and like listen to a playlist or something like that, I find my energy increases and I think to myself, why don't I listen to more music? Like it makes me feel good. Listen to more music, people.
100%. Yeah. And maybe find a playlist. Like I have a few different playlists that I add to depending on like the mood of the music. So some of it's like something that, this is going to get me pumped up. So I'll just, anytime I hear a song, it's like, oh man, this song gets me pumped up. I'm going to like throw that on this playlist. Or if it's one that makes me feel inspired, like that the world is beautiful or something like that. You're like, oh man, this song like really gets me in that way. Then I'm like, all right, I'm going to add that to this list. So it's like, depending on what type of work I'm doing, if it's something like, man, I really got to power through this, then I'm going to play this playlist. If it's something more where I'm contemplating or working through brainstorming, maybe it's this more focused sounding playlist, maybe something ambient, so it's like arranging it to those moods can be really helpful so that when you get into a certain type of work, you can play one of those playlists and then it really helps you get back into that mood again to get that kind of work done.
Yeah, I have a couple really good ones. One's called Morning Motivation. These are all on Spotify. And you can subscribe to them. One's Morning Motivation, and that one just has a eclectic, music from multiple decades, and it's really good. And then there's another one called Chill Covers, which also just kind of gets you like in a really, it's got like, you hear some classic songs, you're like, oh, that was a great song, and it's like, oh, this is a cool cover of it. And then there's another one that's kind of weird. It's called Lobby Music.
Okay.
It's jazz vibes.
Nice.
But it's just got like beats and it's more like ambient and stuff like that. And that one, just having it on, like as you're working and doing things, just makes you feel good.
I love it.
Yeah.
Cool. I'm going to have to check that one out. That Lobby Music one sounds interesting.
Yeah, it's good. You like it.
Cool. Yeah. And then number 9 is hang out with positive friends. Hey, that's why I do the podcast with you. It's working.
Right. It's working.
Yeah.
We're hanging out with positive people.
Exactly. And, I don't think you should not, be there for people that are not positive. I think you should still spend time with them and maybe encourage them and stuff. And when I mean positive, I know I'm not saying being 100% realistic or living in a fantasy world, and being in denial that you have problems.
Rose-colored glasses, as they like to say.
Right. But if people have an overall optimistic, in the end, they have like, when they come to the conclusion of working through a problem, they're like, you know what, but there's still hope because there's something we can do here to fix this, or they're action oriented and not, they don't revel in being miserable. Some people just enjoy, kind of staying in that and feeling that misery and feeling sorry for themselves long term. I don't think that's healthy to spend a lot of time with people that think that way. If you're looking to make forward progress and stuff, it's not going to help you. And being intentional about who are the people I spend time with when I walk away from them at the end of having lunch with them, or a conversation where I'm like, man, I feel good. I feel inspired. I learned something. I feel motivated. I feel like they spoke something to me that made me feel like, man, I can do this.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I tell my kids, it's important to spend time with the right kind of people, because you become the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with, And so I think it's definitely important to put yourself around positive people, because I've also seen, how when you're constantly around someone who's negative or always complaining, how that really brings down a whole room. I've been in workplaces where it's like, man, that whole department is just like a rain cloud over it, because there's a handful of the leaders there that are just always negative, and it just, the whole energy there is bad. Being around the right people is definitely important.
Yeah. Yeah. That can get toxic after a while, for sure. If a whole culture gets negative, it's hard.
Yeah. And then number 10, what are you wrapping it up with, Ben?
Acknowledge the good things. So this is kind of that attitude of gratitude. We talked a little bit about values and stuff when we were talking to Todd Evenson, and one of yours is gratitude. So just going along with that, just when something's going wrong, write down some of the stuff that's going right, and think through that stuff and realize, kind of like I said earlier, with putting things into perspective, that there are so many good things that you can acknowledge right now, that when I sit down and do that, I'm like, oh, man, my life is great. All these things are going right. And it kind of just puts me in more of a positive perspective.
Yeah. Man, I love this. I think that your attitude is really what shapes your future and your present. And so having a positive one is going to give you a positive present and a positive future. So to recap, identify the source where that attitude's coming from. Go for a walk, take a short nap, do something creative, meditate and breathe, eat healthy, put things in perspective, listen to some upbeat music, hang out with positive friends, and acknowledge all the good things in your life.
Yeah, and your action item for this week would be, next time you're feeling down or a little stressed out, then just go for a walk. If you're able to do that where you live right now, go for a walk. If you're not, sit down, do some reflection and some deep breathing. And if you want more details on that, like I said, check out episode 10 with Dr. Sherry Walling. If you want to learn more about what we're up to, you can go to thefridayhabit.com to find show notes for this episode, and you can find links to our websites and ways to get in touch. At the bottom of the page, you can download our guide to the Friday Habit System that will show you how to set aside one full day each week dedicated to working on your business instead of in your business. And don't forget to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts by following the link in the show notes, and try to work in tennis shoes or cummerbund. Good luck.
That's right. And thank you guys so much for listening to the Friday Habit. And until next time, live every day like it's Friday.